So I went to the gynecologist, and so as soon as I went in, well, they'll ask you your typical questions. Are you seeing anybody? Are you sexually active? And all this sort of thing. So I said yes. Well, I was dating a guy, but no, I wasn't at that point sexually active. And so after my examination, he examined me and he said, well, would you like to go on the pill? And I said, no. I said, not at this point. I really don't feel there's a need to go on the pill. And he looked at me very honestly and what really was surprising, like he was a man who was like close to 70 years old. That's what really blew me away. But he looked at me and he said, he said, I have to tell you, he said, if you're not wanting to ask for birth control pills because you think you can't have sex, then you rest your mind assured, he said, because like your face, he said, your vagina grew very beautifully. And he said, you are very, very normal. He said, and you can go out and you can have sexual intercourse with anybody who you want to. He said, I just would rather, he said, that you'd know. He said, because I don't want you coming back to my clinic. He said, in 2 years' time, saying that it's too late for your birth control now.
At first, I didn't actually understand what self-esteem and that really meant until I started talking to Women for Change and girls like that. But before that, I was having some counseling and handling certain problems I've had growing up. And I had to figure out why it happened. I felt very low about myself. I felt very worthless at school because I never felt like I had a lot to offer. But as through counseling, talking to friends and people, I started to realize, well, yes, there is some good in me as a person.
At the moment, I don't have a partner, but I see this not so much as a problem with my disability or people's attitudes about women with disability. Disability should be asexual, but more that I don't have time. Especially my youngest is a very demanding child because of his own learning problems. And I just don't find that I have the time to date. So that it's more of a family situation right now rather than a choice or a stereotype.
I find that every day there's a struggle, either because I'm deaf or because I'm a lesbian. It depends on how open I am as a lesbian in society. Because my lesbianism is more invisible than my being deaf. The barrier of being deaf is more obvious. And sometimes I get really tired. I think, why can't I just relax? Why can't I just be me and not have to worry about a barrier? Not to have to worry about trying to make other people feel comfortable because I'm deaf or because I'm a lesbian.
I have cerebral palsy is what it actually is. It's not a serious disability as to some people who are on crutches or in wheelchairs and things like that. It takes me a while to memorize things or to catch on to something new. But if you get the patience and I got the time, more or less, right, It's not my fault I can't learn just like that, I think it's kind of my CP as well. The brain doesn't always want to take a lot in at one time. I think one of the problems with my self-esteem was that I've been physically and sexually abused since I was born or since I was old enough to be more or less tied around or thrown around. When I left home with my real family, real parents, like I mentioned, I was tied down in a crib, but I was also beaten around. I was smacked quite a lot at times. And then when I went into the Exxon house, it got really bad for me, and there was abuse. The staff used to come out and just give you a flick side the head or send you off in the corner or put you in a room by yourself for different reasons. And then when I moved into my foster home, that was pretty good. But when I moved out on my own in town, relationships were really hard because I've been abused. So like the confidence and the trust was just destroyed. That's when I tried really hard to put my life together and find out who I wanted to be, you know, and what sense of direction I needed. I started talking to close friends, and when I started talking about myself, it's just the last couple of years. Actually, the first one I started with was Roger. Before that, it was really low contact about my personal life. But Roger one that's helped me open up to people and not to be afraid or ashamed of what my life was like. I was always bitter because I had lived in an institution for years. But after talking to other people, they've sort of went through a lot of the same chain of things. So then they come out pretty good, so I thought, well, I can do the same thing. I used to see a counselor at least once a week, sometimes twice a week, if it was needed. And this counselor I had, she was really good and understanding. And she explained a lot of things that I had to improve, and I had to be willing to do it. And that's basically why I got to where I am. Roger gave me a lot of understanding when I told him why I wouldn't let him touch me or hold me, because I was scared. He let me want to build up the trust of my own. And I think that's important. If you can always abused and you don't know anything else, and then someone comes along and they just want to love you and just be there for you, it's really hard because you don't know what to expect. I kept always expecting something to happen when there wasn't anything going to happen, you know. And once I got over that, well, then the relationship started to build pretty well on its own.
I was born with a rare bone disease called autosomal recessive osteogenesis imperfecta. It's where you have a lack of calcium in your bones, and your bones break very easy. Actually, as easy as the snap of a twig on a tree. The disease is hereditary, and it comes from the fact that you have two parents who are carriers of the disease. And it's very uncommon for both of your parents to be carriers, but at the same time, it's not impossible. I grew up in a very small community called Jeffreys. That's on the west coast of Newfoundland. We have a population of about 100 families. I have 3 brothers and 2 sisters. One brother has the same bone disease, but the rest are all perfectly healthy. It was really different because there were no other disabled children in the community. And so people's attitudes like really lacked, and they didn't really understand, disabled people at all. And it was really difficult at times. My first relationship, we basically started out as friends. We had met in hospital. We talked, very openly. I said, well, we've been together like 8 months and you've made like no advances whatsoever. And I said, sorry, but I'm not trying to say that I believe everything should happen in one night. But I said, seriously, 8 months. And he said, but how do I make love to you? He said, I just don't know how to do that. And I said, it's like making love to anybody else. You just have to adapt a different way. And there's a lot of things in my life that I tried didn't work out. And if sex didn't work out, it didn't work out. But I was going to want to know if I could or couldn't. And so, but in my heart, I knew that, I was definitely pretty sure that I could. And so I was like spending so much time in this relationship and, wondering, well, can I or can't I, or will he or won't he? And it's like, my God, it's like my life is passing here and we're never going to find out. I remember like just laying down on the bed and it's like, okay, so, well, now you can start making advances now that you know that there's a problem here. And so this still went on for like weeks, and on the last of it I said, look, this is not working for either one of us. I feel like you're on a road to something where you don't know where you're going or what you want, and I truly feel like I'm wasting my time with all this, and there's got to be like, better relationships or better working relationships out there somewhere. And so I tossed it off as a lost cause. My reason in the beginning to move to St. John's was because I couldn't finish my grade 12 on the West Coast. I went to the Miller Center, and that was a school for upgrading in the east end of St. John's. I stayed at a rehabilitation center for the disabled at that time. And they told me that, well, okay, it's a rehabilitation center for the physically disabled, and you have basically a building that you live in, and they provide your attending care and your shelter, your food, and whatnot. And but you're independent. You're solely on your own. It's just that you have the provided assistance. So I thought, well, that was pretty good. It sounded good to me anyway. So I moved into St. John's, and like I said, moved right into the Orange Home. Didn't know nobody in St. John's, not one single person. Mm-hmm. Van should be here too.
Well, I come in the mall at 9 one day.
No. My one and only relationship that I had at the Orange Home was with a guy that I met in school and now married. And that's Mike. So when we first started going together, they thought, oh, this is really great. Like, I think this is super. And so I'd be sitting down spilling my guts and, telling everybody, yeah, how fantastic I found it and all this sort of thing. And so I would have total support from 2 or 3, or what I thought was total support, until I found like my relationship with Mike was being discussed in board meetings and staff meetings, and so it was like everything was charted, and I thought, my God, how do you figure out this is an independent living center? Hi. Yeah. And another thing was at the Orange Home, he wasn't allowed to come in and do any of my needs or anything like that. And so that became very upsetting to him, because some of the things that we would have to face moving into our own apartment or house, he wasn't able to see if he could do it okay before we moved. But we said, well, we've obviously overcome bigger hurdles. So we moved in August of '88. We've been living together fine ever since.
I've been in lesbian for quite a number of years. But I didn't know the word lesbian until I think about 5 or 6 years ago when I went to university. But I started reading about women who are lesbians, about their coming out, and a part of me was feeling, yeah, I'm a lesbian, and then no, because I was with a man at that time. So it was a really confusing time for me. So there'd be many times when I feel, yes, I am a lesbian. No, I'm not. But then it took about a good half year before I finally decided that I was a lesbian. And when I finally admitted to a friend of mine, before even admitting to myself, I felt so relieved. It's like coming home. It was wonderful. It was really wonderful. People often ask me whether my partner is deaf or hearing, and I would respond, yes, my partner is hearing. And people would say, well, does she sign? And I said, no, she doesn't, because we can communicate very well. For myself, having been raised in a hearing community where I didn't know a lot of sign language until a few years back, I'm able to communicate verbally very well with other people, and can be very easy to understand.
I've learned some of the strategies for getting your attention and waving hands and maintaining eye contact and stuff like that. I find now when I talk to hearing people, I'm still maintaining eye contact, and if they look away, I wait. I stop talking, I wait for them to look at me again, and they're, yes. You know, so it's interesting because I realize how many times people do stuff. Now, again, it's very sensitizing because I realize how often people do things that make it impossible for you to use the skills that you have with lip reading and, you know, some of the hearing. So I've learned a lot from it.
How we met was through a committee on women with disabilities that I was involved with for about 3 years. And I remember when I walked into the room, I said to our mutual friend, I said, "Who is that woman?" It was like, no. I said, "Is she a lesbian?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "Okay." And then I remember feeling, well, there was an empty chair beside you. I said, I didn't want to sit here. Yeah.
All these little things going on. All I remember is being petrified that here were all these very strong, militant women with disabilities who were putting the service network and the social system in its place, and that I worked in that system, and I felt so, oh my God, you know, really, for a while, quite defensive. And I remember that you said, "Oh, it's okay." And I thought, oh, thank God, someone in the room doesn't hate me. And then I guess, you know, we worked together quite a bit after that on the committee, doing different work. And it's likely about, what, maybe a month after I met you, we first went out?
I remember the few days after we started going out, you called me at work on the TDD, and it didn't say, "This is the relay operator calling. I have a call for you." That's usually what the relay operator says. And I thought, this said, "Hi, this is Carrie." And I was, "Carrie, yeah, where's the TDD? Oh, I bought it, it's mine." And my jaw just, he just dropped, and I was very inspired by that you wanted to meet me halfway, trying to remove the communication barrier, and no one has ever done that for me before. And that showed me that you wanted to be in an equal relationship, that I'm not dependent on you or dependent on the relay operator to be able to communicate with you. I mean, it's kind of hard to be able to have, like, you know, a hot conversation through the relay operator, so.
Right, hard to flirt through a third party.
Yeah.
I was one of the measles babies of the 40s. I was born with congenital cataracts with retinal damage, so I've been legally blind all my life. My mother's family is Native, my father's family is not, they're Celtic. The teen years for me were very hard. I got teased a lot. I was tormented by both boys and girls, called Four Eyes and Four Eye Squaw and other names. And it was very hard for me. I had very few friends. I didn't date at all. I was just very isolated. I pretty much was quite innocent about male-female relations until I went away to college. I began to experiment around with sex, and self-esteem wise, I found I went through a period of a lot of promiscuity, and the reasoning behind that was that I was very starved for affection. And not going through a normal dating period in my teens, I really didn't know a lot of how to react. And when I was approached by men who wanted sex and that was the only way I could get affection, then that was the price that I paid. Also at that time, I found that dance became quite a strong symbol for me of self-esteem. When I danced, I found that people didn't care about my eyes and whether I could see or not. And I couldn't get a job at the dime store or as a cleaning lady or something like that because they would tell me, oh, you can't see. So for me, getting a job as a dancer was the first real job I ever had where my sight didn't count and where I could make money on my own. So instead of being a very degrading experience like it would be for most women, on one level it was a very liberating and esteem awarding thing for me. I got married when I was in my mid-20s, and I didn't realize at the time when I got married that I had married a man who had a very severe drinking problem. And, you know, in other ways, he was a good father and a good man, but his drinking, and especially around the driving, was just a totally fearful experience for me. I ended up leaving him and going back to school. And at that time I got my master's degree. And he died shortly after we had separated. So here I was with 3 babies, all of them still in diapers. And the reason being that I have a set of twins. And none of them were over 3 years old. And it was a very, very hard years. After my first husband passed away, my 3 older boys were still very young. I really didn't want to raise them in a city. I felt very strongly that I wanted them to have the experience of living on the land. But I knew with my disability that would be very hard to do. So I went on a quest to look for places where we could live. and we spent a long time just sort of wandering around. And I had very idealistic ideas about the land, and people would want to help with these boys to grow up there, but they didn't work out. Here I was, a disabled woman with 3 children, and I knew I couldn't, or at least I felt I couldn't survive with 3 babies out on the land on my own. How would I get to town for my groceries and whatever, you know, not being able to drive a vehicle. That's been my biggest problem. So reluctantly, I had to move back to an urban area. I met Jesse's dad at when I was once again trying to find a place to live on the land. I moved to Alberta, but once we were together, it didn't really work out well. We didn't have a lot of things in common, and so the relationship didn't last for a very long time. This place here in the bush camp is the first time I've had my own camp, and it was a struggle to get it, but it's been great to have it because my youngest boy, the older ones now, they've been in town so long they're not interested, but Jess is still young enough that he wants to learn, and he's very much of a kid who likes to be out on the land or in the bush. So it's been good because now he's finally old enough to carry his share. So it's finally coming together for us again.
For a long time, I used to let people walk over me, take advantage of me, because I was a very easy person going. I didn't understand what my rights were and what was right and what was really wrong. I was always the type of person I wouldn't hurt anybody. I didn't want anyone to be hurt because I guess I went through so much myself. But I'm after finding out that's not the case. If they can walk over you, they'll do it all the time. But in the end, you're actually getting hurt more than you let on. So I more or less had to learn to say, well, no, I don't want you doing this, or no, I'm not ready for that yet. Give me some more time. Don't push me. Or, no, I don't want to do it. When we could change was really good. It gave me a lot of self-confidence and self-esteem. When I was in it, I was always there. I asked questions when it was needed to, or if anyone needed some help in understanding what's going on, I'd try and help them. We had like a little group made up of support group, where if anyone was there that wanted someone to talk to privately for information they needed, we were there for that too. So that really helped a lot, the support group that we had.
There was sometimes, like especially if I went to dances or a place where everybody was sort of paired up and I saw everyone together and dancing and holding hands and everything, it sort of made me, think, well, what's wrong with me? How come I'm not doing this? And it was really hard to deal with.
And you can't make somebody go out with you if they don't want to go out with you, and you can't make somebody like you if they don't not like you as a person, but I mean if You know, if it's not what they want, well, that's all they can do.
Loneliness for me didn't become an issue later in life. But I discovered a trick. I would make myself appreciate like turning loneliness into solitude.
You know, loneliness is not something that goes away very easily. There are times now I experience it. And I mean, and I'm going with someone I'm going to affect. I'm living with the guy. And it's just, there are days I still go through it, but it's not as crazy as I was before, you know. I think I expect too much.
I recall growing up thinking that I would the only deaf girl, and I was, because I grew up in a hearing school system, right from grade 1 or kindergarten to university. And so I got a very good sense of isolation, of being picked at by teammates. That often was really difficult because people would tease me, they would tease my speech because I couldn't talk very well. They would laugh at me. I remember how I hated my voice, how I hated my speech, wishing that I could speak like a hearing person, that nobody would laugh at me, nobody would tease me, that I wouldn't feel very isolated. And then I realized that I was very ashamed of my deafness. I wanted to be proud of it. But it took a long time to realize that I am a person as well as having a deaf identity. It wasn't until I was in high school that I started to learn more about signing. And I thought, great, wow, this is another language. It's very visual, it's beautiful. I can communicate with other people. But then I got trapped into the hearing way of thinking. Well, speaking English is better than ASL, American Sign Language. And that was really hard for me to work through. But then over the years, while I was going to university, as I matured, I realized that it's okay to learn to sign. It's okay to sign. It's not a bad thing. It's not inferior. It's a whole language in itself. It's a whole different culture. And so I found that I could jump into both communities, the hearing community and the deaf community. But I never really feel like I'm a full part of either community. So what I've been trying to do was to set up a bridge where I can walk between the deaf community or to one community from another. And that's the same thing what the disabled women's movement have been trying to do with the women's community, is to set up a bridge. So then women with disability can have access to the women's movement. If it were going to be a peer support group for women with disability, you have interviews. It'd be nice if the therapist was a feminist therapist.
Yeah.
But it's more equal rather than that there be such a big power dynamic there.
We're kind of at
My involvement with various women's organizations, Women with Disability organizations, have been focused on advocating women with disability rights and on accessibility as well. Not only for myself as a deaf woman, but for wheelchair access, large print, things like that.
the ILRC board to see if they think that that's an idea. I don't know how you would feel about that.
I find that women in the community are generally supportive with the idea, with the concept of access for all women. But when it comes to putting it into practice, like, oh, we forgot, no, we cannot avoid it, those kind of things. And that's where I feel that it's hard, because I feel that I have something to offer to the women's community. I want to share my ideas. I want to share my experience as a woman who happen to be deaf. And not just my story. I want to hear other women's stories too. But if I can't even hear what they have to say to me, then I feel really isolated. Okay, thanks. Take care. Bye.
You know, what did we talk about before, this secondary inaccessibility or something? Things aren't accessible to me either because I'm your partner, but that's, you know, it shouldn't be this differential thing that, no, sorry, we'd like you to be there, but tough luck. It's frustrating when it's social events to me are what gives me the energy to go on with doing a lot of work within the women and within the lesbian community. And if I'm not getting those goodies, it's pretty hard to want to do the everyday work if you're not being able to celebrate along with everybody else.
They don't stereotype mothers this way.
I've been on the Women's Network Canada board for about, I think it's about 4 years now. It consists of all women with disabilities on the board. Its primary focus is advocacy for women with disabilities at the national level and doing research in a variety of areas.
As well.
There was a John Canada conference 1 year ago where there was about 150 women with disabilities who attended this conference, and for many of them it was the first time that they had ever met so many women with disabilities. I myself personally was very inspired by seeing other deaf women attending the conference and meeting deaf lesbians.
We decided to get married because we loved each other, and that was our one biggest reason.
Okay. More, eh? Get out of there. Okay. Ma'am? Right here, yeah. That's not ma'am, that's mother. Okay, mother. That's good.
Open those mushrooms, Serena. My dad had like a lot of concerns because when it came to me saying, well, Dad, I'm involved in a relationship, I think his first initial question that he wanted to ask but not right about was, what do you mean you involved in a relationship, sort of thing. But then as things progressed and we started like going home to the West Coast together, his total opinion like changed dramatically. He says now that it was easy because he could see how Mike had accepted me, and he could see how Mike had accepted the disability, and nothing was too much for Mike. And so he sees him as being the caretaker, which I think was his biggest concern, that he never thought anyone else could care for me and tend to my physical needs as well as my emotional needs like my parents had all my life. But now I'm just another one of the kids with a husband. Now, if this doesn't fit me, you can
Blame it on him.
order any prawns. Oh, I don't. You cut it.
When my children were quite young, I didn't find any problem, having them. I nursed all my babies, even the twins, and I nursed them for at least a year. I loved that baby age. They were easy to just sit out in a rocking chair and cuddle. It was the toddler age I found hard because I couldn't see them when they got out of my range of vision, and that was quite close. So there was a lot of battles of will at that time where they wanted to go explore and I wanted them to stay where I could see them. And it became very difficult as the boys grew older. They learned at an early age, I'd say about 3 or 4, that they could see more than I could, and that they had much more control over the situation than a normal child of their age would have. If they were real quiet, for example, when I called them in for dinner, I could walk past them at a very close distance and not see them. So they learned very early how to con me, how to do things behind my back. They know exactly how much I can't or can't see. They know how to push my buttons real easy so that I'll, go screaming and yelling around the house. They've known this. And it was a very rude awakening when they went to school and found out that the teacher could see as good as they could. And so they had a problem. It's very difficult for a disabled woman to have children on her own without an able-bodied person, either in the family or a very close support person. And I find myself right now sort of torn between doing for myself and doing for my children. And I have never been able to really integrate those together. And perhaps the reason is because I've never had a lot of support. The government has been very, very sporadic about services for me. So I was basically on my own.
Can I have a taste? Give me a taste. Done? It's good enough for you?
I think many disabled women want to have a baby because they're very isolated and they want someone to love. I've heard women at conferences say, "My baby's my best friend." And that to me is really scary, because your baby is not your best friend. Your baby is your child, and you're responsible for that person, and it cannot be your substitute for your peer group and for affection of your peers. And I would truly try to, in hindsight, caution any woman who's thinking of having a baby because she feels very lonely, to really think that through a lot more clearly.
Basically now I'm trying to get my reading level up, and I hope to get grade 8, grade 9, and after that I just have to see where I'm gonna go. As for the future, for me and Roger, we plan to get married. I have a couple of children, 2 I think is all we're planning. As for a long-range goal is just to rear our children and give them a good life. Send them to proper schoolings and make sure they're brought up properly. And as for me and Roger, we hope to get a trip or 2. I think, we've talked about having a couple of trips down the road. One it was, I dare say that's going to be a good thing if we can get enough money together. But and have our own home and more or less just settle down with our own family.
Gail, you want to help me with my boots?
Could you get that first? The relationship with our children is going to be a lot better than what we had. If we're calling what having problems, that we're not sure of or we don't understand, we're going to go and get the extra help we need and support. I'm hoping to have a good relationship with both my children. How I'm going to do that, sometimes I'm not really sure because I'm not sure exactly what it is. I've never had it myself, so it's going to be a new experience for me. But I plan to love both my children as best as possible. And they won't go what I went through. There's no way. You know.
In making it easier to suit the baby's needs as well as your own.
The education for disabled parenthood is not that strong.
No,
it's not very strong at all. And I suppose a lot of people don't think about it until you're actually into it.
That's because we're supposed to be non-sexual beings.
Yeah, exactly, right? Not supposed to
Nobody's
be
developed
pregnant,
a way for us to take care of our kids, so we're sort of on our own to figure out what to do.
Some people think you shouldn't have them, period.
Yeah, exactly.
I had one person said to me, you know, why do you want to have a child? You're better off the way you are. And like the question wasn't, I was never asked if I would like a child. I was like, well, you shouldn't have one because, it's going to be too much trouble. And like, well, thank you for asking me, but, I think I'll be the judge to that.
That's right. It's up to you to decide.
On the other hand, I'd like to have a child, but I am afraid of the genetic possibility of passing my disability on to a child.
It is a lot of responsibility.
Yeah, like I said, I got a full mom of my own, so why should I have someone to tell me, you shouldn't have a baby or you shouldn't get married? I'm quite capable of deciding that myself. So you really don't need no one on the back of you telling you, well, you shouldn't do it because you're on crutches or you're 3'1" or, quite capable of
You
doing
know all the problems involved, so you can make a
well,
responsible
look, if I came this
decision
far
based
now,
on that.
if I came this far now, there's no reason why I can't have a child.
That's right, and that's
And
your decision to make.
if the child should turn out like myself, spina bifida, well, if I came this far, there's no reason why the child can't.
That's right, exactly.
Right?
Slap it anyway. There goes up the freezer, all that. Yep.
Oh, this is not going to fit up there.
Yes, it is. Okay, that's good enough.
Well, when I first, started going with Gail or have thoughts of any sexual relationship, I always thought that would be the most difficult part of the relationship. You have to have understanding, and be able to communicate a lot stronger, and really feel that you need to be with each other in order for it to work. Disability will have a major effect on it because disabled people
Hard
weren't
to adjust according.
generally the feeling was that they couldn't be sexually involved, right? They couldn't get,
Yeah.
Yeah,
as soon as you look at a disabled person, they can't have sex, but that's wrong. We have just as much desire for sex as anybody else. You're going to have to do some readjusting as to able-bodied people wouldn't have to, but for disabled people to do. But if you love each other and you care for each other as much as you say, the adjustment is just ordinary. It's not like you just do it because it's better. You talk about it first and you find out what you can do, what you can't do, and then you go from there. One step at a time, more or less, in practice.
I mean, it's a great relationship. I think there's just so many unique things that both of us bring to it, and it's been very good for me to realize that people can speak for themselves and tell you exactly what they need, and all I have to do is ask. I don't have to guess.
One of the things that has inspired me being your partner is that you saw beyond my deafness. You saw me as a woman. So cute. But that's important because it's important for me. I've been talking all my life for people to see beyond my deafness and see I am a person. And from the first day we met, you saw beyond that. I really appreciate that. And that's one of the best things about our relationship.
You want to get up now?
Yeah, I do and I don't. But I will anyway. Well, you're really gonna make it I don't now, aren't you? When it came to our sexual relationship or intimacy or whatever, the strange thing is that Mike never spent any time saying, how can I do this? Or how do we do this? It was like by the time that we were ready to make love, Mike had fully known how to move me, how to adapt to the different ways you would do things. And so it was like the first night we made love, it was like, I never had to explain anything. It was like, it just became a very natural procedure like it would for any normal couple. And we didn't have to say, well, hang on now, before we do this, this is how we're gonna do it. And that was the one thing, like, because Mike was my first, and that was like the one thing I was solely amazed at, was because I really thought the first time I ever made love to a guy it was going to be, I'm going to have to draw him a picture before this can happen, and I was really had that stuck in my mind. But in fact, it didn't happen that way, and I don't like it at all. And because we had been together like 5 months before we actually, took on the initiative of having a sexual relationship, it was like just the magic of the moment. It was meant to happen, and it did, and it was like, after it was over, it was, well, that was pretty amazing, like we did this and no problems, right? And we spent no time talking about it. We just let it happen, and it happened perfectly, and from that day it still happens perfectly, and no questions asked. That was the one thing that I was like totally amazed at, was because he had never dated anyone with a disability. He had never grown up with anybody with a disability. And even in school, he never had been in contact with anyone with a disability. He just learned through being with me, right from the first night he ever took off my night dress. It was like, okay, you just tell me how to do this and I can do it. And that's exactly what he did. And from the most minor things to the most major things. But because he knew the extent of my disability and how easy my bones could break or this sort of thing, I think probably he spent some time by himself and thought about it and said, well, this is the way we'll do it.
Okay, I'm going back to bed now.
Oh no, get up. Come on. Well, I think awareness has a long way yet to go. And I'd say that's about the only way to go. But the thing is that there's so many areas and so many categories of life that the public still has to be made aware of. And that's in medical, accessibility, attitude, I mean, it's just like so far behind. And advancements are happening, yes, and I'm sure some people believe that disabled people are allowed out of the closet now, but you have to realize that this is what's happening, and that your opinions of disabled people really affect us in our daily living. And it affects us to the point where it can actually stop us from wanting to carry out a normal life or whatever.
I'm writing a book on myself and my life. I'm doing it for a couple of reasons. One, to more or less put my life together as a whole and to sort out some emotional feelings. And more or less to do just a bit of research, answer questions that I hopefully can answer. So I'm hoping to be able to write the book and finish it. There's going to be a lot of emotional problems there, painful probably at times, stuck on the things that you're not quite aware of or forgot about. But it's coming. I think I've come a long ways.
I guess the really strong bond develops after a while, where you do have a bonding of love and you grow together. And it is important to feel that you can teach them what you know and try to guide them as best you can. And just the tenderness and love that will develop. It counterbalances the hard times too. And the older ones, they're almost out on their own. My oldest is, and it's nice to see that they're doing something on their own and that they've survived and they're not juvenile delinquents or whatever. So I must have done something right. And it's very satisfying.
The music inside of me yearned to get out, to dance with the rhythmic movement of my body. This music, my passion for life, was stifled in infancy, but no longer. I have now left my lifelong prison to begin my journey of reclaiming myself. My mind, soul, and body yearn to dance to the music inside of me. Now is my time to dance, to celebrate my being, to celebrate having survived. And dance I do, with every cell in my mind, soul, and body, as I have never danced before. So this is what freedom would be like, dancing on my way to freedom, finally free to be me, Amithia.
So I think it's important that if a disabled woman can come to terms and feel comfortable with her disability and to be feeling comfortable enough to explain her needs to her partner, then their relationship is certainly going to go a lot further than if she's not willing to talk about it or whatever. And so it's the same thing with the public. I mean, you have to be able to get out there and say, look, this is the way it is and not the way you think it is, and I'm very able to be a sexual human being, and your myths are very, very much that, myths. And given the chance, we can prove you wrong.
da da da